Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Sorry, we are off to a little late start for those that are listening live on Facebook. However, we are here as usual. My name is Sean Phillips. As always, I am joined alongside my two co-hosts, Mr. Andy Van Beber and Travis Kirkendall. Gentlemen, how are you two doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. I've
Doing damn good. Set a full plate of dinner.
Man, and I hear
the neighbor.
we hear the crickets outside there too, Travis.
Yeah.
Just to go. Travis is going meandering about his neighborhood in Chicago there.
So there's a 50-50 chance Travis will be shot by the end of the episode. So we are going to roll the dice and see how it goes.
You know, you say that. There actually was a shooting not very far from here recently. So, and I'm actually on that street. So
brother, please don't get shot. Don't, we love you too much to see that happen to you.
No, we're going to be good. We're going to be good.
I thought it was pretty good. I got in my second round of driving training, and 2 weeks from today, boys, I will be taking the CDL Class B test.
Nice. Congratulations. And
good thoughts and prayers for me, please, on that day.
How often will you be bus driving?
Well, right now my plan is just to do I sponsor Quiz Bowl, Stuco, Youth and Government, track, and I figure between all of those I will get plenty of driving in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we apologize for the background noise. There's some dogs yapping. That's all right.
Okay, I'll mute it when I'm not talking.
Okay, sounds good. You're good.
You're good, buddy.
And so yeah, we again, it's kind of been a little bit of a hectic, kind of crazy week, all over the place. Been super duper busy for me, but I had a great weekend. How about you guys? Did you guys do anything spectacular over the weekend?
Just like I said, I did a lot of driving today, but Bryson soccer season is in full bloom. You soccer day, you'll get there one day, Sean and Travis. You'll become.
I'm extremely excited for when youth soccer starts. I'm a huge soccer guy,
so we had another game. We had a game Saturday and we had a game tonight. So it's boom boom. A quick shout out too before I forget about it. Those of you in the Pike County area, this Saturday from noon to 6, the Twin Pike Family YMCA is having their annual fundraiser. It'll be a good time. Goes from 12 to 6, $10 gets you in, and that gets you food, that gets you bounce house, that gets you into the cornhole tournament. The cornhole tournament's 50-50. Any questions about that, I will post a link on the Voice of Reason podcast page a little bit later. And also, hopefully tonight, we are being sponsored by Van Beber and Sons DJ Services again. And if you mention this podcast, you too can get a 10% discount on your next event when you register with Van Beber and Sons Podcasting.
Nice.
DJ Service, I mean.
Nice.
Just mention this and you'll get the 10% discount.
Don't forget to swipe up. You got to tell people to swipe up.
Oh, yeah. Swipe up and subscribe. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
So swipe up, give it a like, give it a subscribe.
Yes, please.
How about you, Travis? Anything good on your end over the weekend?
We had a good weekend. Like you guys know, my mother-in-law's in town from Venezuela. So we took her downtown, showed her Chicago, and showed her all the sights, the Bean, Trump Tower, all that stuff. And then Sunday, we went out. She's got family out in the suburbs. We went out and had a family dinner up there, and it was a really good time. Pretty laid back weekend, and just got out and enjoyed the weather, man. It's been really nice here.
Yeah. Sean, how about you?
Nice. Yeah, super busy. Did a ton of wrestling Saturday. Did 3 matches in a day. Did some outdoor ones, then did some indoor ones. Got beat up, bruised, and then but had a blast. It was a ton of fun. Sunday, kind of chillaxed. Watched a little bit of football and kind of just had a day. I didn't watch much football. What I watched was a piece of dumpster fire trying to make its way, across the football field, and it wasn't a whole lot of nothing. But
Well, I was happy
you
to
win and you learn, and
I was happy to see that no police officers were there to arrest any of my players at the football game with the
yes,
Chiefs.
the Kansas City Chiefs made it a week without an arrest, and I think that is a Guinness Book of World
That
Record
is
for the
a
team.
Guinness
So
Book of World Record. Yeah. So
yeah, if they're not beating their kids or beating their girlfriends, they're beating the Cleveland Browns. So it's
yeah.
that's how this week
Yes.
went.
Oh, and Sean, we have to mention we had our little. I'm in a fantasy league. I've been in a fantasy league in a couple of years, and Sean invited me. We had a. I think I got. I think I was. If I was in the room with you guys would have came across the room and just hoe slapped me for. I did the unspeakable sin when I drafted two quarterbacks back to back, Patrick Mahomes and then Kyler Murray, and I think the whole room wanted to get up and slap me.
It was funny. Well, I was surprised. I was surprised you benched Kyler. He had a great game.
He did have a great game. So
Yeah, no, it was. Yeah, it's always a good time. Fantasy for me always starts out rough, and then it usually kind of pans out. We'll see how this year goes.
We'll
Though,
see.
So
We'll see.
yeah, well, as we kind of get into this week's discussion, we are going to kind of to let our listeners know it's mainly going to be a bitch and gripe fest.
Yeah, it is.
And we've steered clear of kind of talking about Afghanistan and the president and COVID for a little while. And we're going to kind of shuffle a little bit more towards some information and just some stats and stuff that's kind of happening in Afghanistan. So as many of you guys know, recently, at the end of August, we withdrew our troops from Afghanistan, ending a 20-year war in there. And I think for most of us, when I say that it's good that 20-year war is coming to a close and is wrapping up, I think it's pretty fair to say that everyone is happy. War is not something we necessarily want to be a part of, especially one like this. However, we are really seeing the repercussions of what a very clumsy and disorganized withdrawal from a nation really genuinely does look like. And this isn't just something of like, I'll and I know I'm kind of jumping the gun in here a little bit.
Go ahead.
But if we ignore, how the Afghan army reacted to the Taliban's forces moving in, overtaking post without, bullets being fired. If we ignore that aspect of it, but we have to take into account the almost lack of empathy we have seen from our leadership when it came to American citizens that were still in Afghanistan, when it comes to our foreign ally citizens that were still left in Afghanistan, who heavily relied on a large U.S. military presence. And it's one of those things where Travis kind of knows what I'm talking about when I say the word OPSEC or operational security. Typically, the United States military doesn't exactly toss around exact dates, times, specific locations, anything like that when they're doing withdrawals. However, leaving a lot of these individuals kind of hanging as to they didn't really have a time frame when they might be able to get out, and leaving a lot of those individuals there while the Taliban was taking over was a huge oversight that, frankly, our administration missed. And I think a lot of the other handlings of what our administration has done has been quite literally felt rather lazy. I mean,
do you think so? In the, I want to hit that point first, Sean. When you say rather, I mean, do you feel like this was well thought out, or obviously it did not go the way that Joe wanted it to go?
No, I think part
do you think the planning wasn't there, or what?
Correct. I don't think there was communication between our administration and the individuals that were in power of the Afghanistani government at the time. And when I mean communication, I'm not talking about just like letting them know, hey, we're going to be leaving around this date. Clearly, if I feel like if the United States had actually kind of vetted and kind of looked and gotten the attitude and kind of seen what kind of fighting force the Afghanistani army was really going to put forth when the Taliban raided or invaded, all these posts across the nation, I don't think it would have been such a sudden withdrawal. Or if it would have, there would have been a lot more time put into place. Like I feel like if our leadership would have done the due diligence to kind of actually look and see, okay, hey, who do we still have here in America? Not in America, in Afghanistan. Who are our American citizens still here? Our journalists, our individuals that are, contractors, all these other individuals that are in this nation, we need to get them out first before we start withdrawing our militant forces. Instead, we pulled out rather abruptly, and we kind of knew that was going to happen. But in the same token, it was almost a week before we heard from our president because he was on vacation. Now, I'm not saying that
in and of itself sickens me.
Yes, it's one of those things where this is a predicament where I understand there's a lot of other powers at play. Like, obviously, the president is the most important kind of piece to this puzzle, but there's other individuals that are making this call too. However, when you are, this is like trying to go to a Queen concert and then Freddie Mercury's just like, still alive, but just I didn't feel like showing up for this leg of the tour,
right?
And then instead of like replacing him or having a mouthpiece for him, there's just no one there. I mean, we didn't even hear anything from the vice president during this time. It wasn't like it was silence from two of the most influential Americans in the United States who play a role in exactly what happened, and they were silent. And then the fact that you have Joe that comes back, does a press conference, leaves after the press conference, and then is gone again.
Uh-oh. Sean froze up on us there.
Well, I lost him too.
Well, one of the things and hopefully Sean will get back here with us in just a few minutes. Travis, if you can go ahead and text him and let him know that we lost his feed there for a second. One of the things that I think that we need to get into is, and again, going with this and talking about how that Joe was non-existent. Joe was, and I was reminded of this. I think, watching all the yeah, I got you, Sean.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem. But watching all the 9/11 stuff this weekend. Now, granted, I liked George Bush Jr. I liked him. He was a bit of a head case too. But at the same time, and I'm old enough to remember this. In the midst of this crisis, he made himself visible constantly. And I mean, the night that we were attacked, I still remember going home and watching that speech and just having a sense of, I don't know if I want to say, having a sense of just, oh my gosh, I'm relieved that this thing is going to get better, that we have, the situation is under control, and that we don't have to worry about what's going to happen, the next day or the next day or the next day.
You felt like there was actually like a leadership presence. Right now. There was a difference.
I did feel like there was a leadership presence, but in this, he came back, and then just we had to piece things. I think we had to piece things together by ourselves, didn't we? I mean, everything that we got was you got something from the, and for once, not all the news media was on the same page with this, and which kind of surprised me. But what really surprised me was it, and still is, how even the liberal media, who is, Joe was their golden boy, but now the liberal media has done everything, except practically pretty much throwing him under the bus.
Which is interesting because I don't know about you guys, but what I'd like to get your guys' thoughts. Who do you think is the Republican nominee on the next docket for president?
Maybe that guy from Florida.
From who?
Who's that governor from Florida?
Oh, Ron DeSantis.
You think he goes for it, or
no? You know what?
I don't think Dan Crenshaw's there yet.
No, and I talked to my Floridians, at least conservative Floridians, are not crazy. Even though Ron DeSantis is conservative, my brother is ultra conservative, and he just does not have a stomach for Ron DeSantis. At this point, everybody's leaning. I think the Republicans want control, and they're going to put their. I hope that they don't put Trump back in there because just I don't know if they're. Let me say it this way, Sean. I think it's going to be. We need to see how the midterms are going to go right now, and the midterms just a little bit over a year away. I think the Democrats are doing everything that they can possibly do to screw themselves out of the election.
So that was my next question. So looking at how individuals, I would say our local leadership has handled a lot of these issues, I genuinely believe, maybe not in your Chicago's, not in your New York's, not in your Los Angeles's, but in some of your major cities like St. Louis, Kansas City, at least in the Midwest, where you usually have a pretty strong Democratic presence, I genuinely feel like, based off of how COVID-19 was handled, we could see a shift in some of these bigger key, swing city areas that could potentially go back to being red.
And we do have we do have a couple of our listeners who have chimed in, and one said Trump and the other one did say DeSantis.
Here's a bone to throw at you guys. If Trump doesn't get the Republican nomination, obviously he will run as a third party.
Yes.
There's no doubt in my mind.
And then it's going to be 1910 all over again.
If Donald Trump runs, I do firmly believe that if Donald Trump does run for president as a third party, we will see a third party candidate on the debate stage, for the first time in a very, very, very long
1996.
So with that said, if Trump ran independently, what kind of odds do you think he might have as a third party candidate?
I don't see it. I don't see him winning. And I'll be honest, I don't want to see Trump win. Like, we have on both sides, Democrat, Republican, there's so many young, bright, future political leaders, I think would be better for the country. This whole Trump politics and Biden, I don't know. I'd like to see some new blood in there. I'd like to see someone new, something new, refreshing, and I'm not really saying Republican. I'm not really saying Democrat. Of course, who I believe would be the good pick, and I don't know. I just like to see something different.
The days of following blind leadership, it's just blindly.
Oh, it's gotten out of hand.
Blindly,
it's gotten way out of hand.
It's like, okay, so I'm plugged into social media, with sometimes just watching what the kids are saying and stuff like this. And you've got So my son, who is 9 years old, came home, and this is a true story. Last week, came home and asked me, "Is it true that Joe Biden burnt down a children's hospital?" And I said, "No." I said, "Where did you hear that from?" And he's like, "Well, my friends at school said that." And so, I mean, we're indoctrinating young minds into thinking that, here comes Donald Trump on his blazing saddle, his blazing horse, and he's like here to save the day. But
Man, those kids are cool.
Yeah, and
isn't Trump like 78 years old anyway?
Yes.
At what point do we say if someone's too old to be a president too? I mean, I don't know. I'd rather see someone younger, a little bit brighter, and I don't know. I don't want to see Trump again.
So from our feed, and I'll throw this out there to you too. From our feed, one of our listeners said, "What about Huckabee, Mike Huckabee?" And Mike Huckabee to me has been somebody who has been. I don't think he has the assertiveness to be a. The Republicans need to have somebody as bold and maybe not quite as brash as Donald Trump. But with this last thing, and I want to, before we transition too much into, because somebody else said vaccine mandate is to distract us from the mess that he has made in Afghanistan, which I agree with that too. But yeah, I think both, Trump is older than Biden, correct?
I want to say so. Let me look.
I think he is.
But
Joe Biden is 78 years old. And Donald Trump is 75.
Oh, okay. So Biden Joe's older than
3 years older.
And so, I want to kind of bring this back around to Afghanistan if I can. What is, and Travis, I want to bring you in on this question. So a stat that I'd looked up said that when we withdrew from Afghanistan, the training for and I want to make sure I get this number right, so let me read the stat to you. There were 182,071 trained Army and Air Force, and there was 118,628 police and paramilitary security units, with a grand total of 300,699 trained people that we had. And of course, you had contact with people who were training or were being trained, correct?
At the time, yeah.
And this is,
yeah.
And you're never going to hear me say this too much on this podcast, but this was the one time that I agreed with Joe when I said, okay. He said, we've trained them for 20 years. They either got it or they don't got it. And that's the only thing I agreed with him on. And at some point, are these people going to take responsibility for their own country? But we've seen this time and time again when we have said, okay, yay democracy, go democracy, and then we try to introduce it to someone who is not used to democracy. Afghanistan has been, trace them back past the Bedouins. They have always been a tribal people. That's like trying to force, that's like trying to, try to force someone who's really into opera to go to a country music concert. Those are two foreign concepts to each other. You can't just say, hey, here's democracy. Take this and use this. And as soon as, what did we expect? My question is, what did we expect was going to happen when we left? Did we think, because we knew the Taliban was coming. We knew the Taliban was coming. We knew that they were controlling the countryside. But part of me is wondering, okay, were they that powerful that a force of 300,000 plus could not handle them?
I think I said this on the podcast before. The thing with the ANA, the Afghan National Army, and the Afghan National Police, the Border Police, their whole military setup they were very dependent on U.S. intelligence, U.S. air support. Like those two things were like a big part of their operations. And when we immediately just cut it off like that, I mean, that a lot of their strategy was dependent on us to give them the intelligence they needed and giving them the airstrike. I don't think there was no transition. Like we literally just cut them off and said, there you go.
So now,
go ahead.
So you say that, okay, so I'm going to throw the graphic that I shared with you guys. I'm going to throw this graphic up on screen, and some of you have seen this, those of you who are listening, but what I'm putting up on screen is all the stuff that we left behind. Now, and what was the name of that Air Force base, Travis? Akron?
Bagram.
Bagram
Airfield.
Yeah. And so, I mean, if you look at some of the stats on this thing about all the stuff that we left behind, I mean, billions of dollars worth of equipment. You can see Humvee, just by itself, 22,000 Humvees, 8,000 heavy carriers.
And that's not counting all the bases throughout the country too that we left, that we built.
Right. The four C-130s I thought was, you've got to be kidding me. But, and was this stuff left behind for the ANA, or was this just, we're going to just fire sale, get out of here, and not take what we can take?
The way I saw it, maybe at one time it was supposed to be for the ANA, but the way I feel like the U.S., whoever made this decision, I feel like they were really just like, all right, drop everything. We're getting the hell out of here. Because look at the way we left Bagram Airfield. We didn't even tell the Afghan military that we were leaving. They left in the middle of the night and didn't say anything. So it's just so disorganized.
Well,
And some of it makes no sense at all. Why? It just doesn't make any sense as to why they made certain decisions.
Well, and look at some of the other things that came out of that. I know some of our listeners might not follow it, but as someone that's in the service, there's a couple military pages that I follow throughout social media, and some of the stuff, quote unquote, might be speculation. So I'm not going to act like this is 100% fact, but there were individuals that were, part of that group, that last group that left Afghanistan, that straight up posted we were instructed to literally go through Humvees and just cut random cords to make these Humvees semi-inoperable, but for how long? Till they get them repaired. So it's not like they were necessarily, leaving them just directly for the ANA. It was kind of we aren't going to take them with us, but we're going to make it as inconvenient as we can for them to kind of try to get them operable again and, have the supplies to repair them. But, a couple of cords isn't the end of the world.
Right.
And then remember the footage of the service dogs that were left in kennels over there. That one is wild because that one's one that really, really stings and really just kind of goes to show, what some of the leadership on those posts kind of where they were at, where their hands were pressed against the wall as well from people back home, and then now it's things like that are tough, are really, really tough to see.
Let me throw this one at you, Sean, and this was from another one of our listeners. This is an interesting point too. We could have kept a base there. We have bases in Germany and Japan, and we did in the Philippines, and we still have one in Guantanamo. Could we kept it? Could a small, and she asked, could a small presence have kept things in check? And we have, and on our we don't even know what our intelligence on the ground is now. I mean, but
that's what we had.
Could we have kept? And that's a real interesting point. Thanks to that listener who typed that. But that's a, I was talking to one of our Marines who was in town. He was in town about a month ago for his mother's funeral, and he's been stationed. I mean, he's stationed in Japan, and I mean, I think that this is something that is possible. I would think that we could have kept, if not that big air base open, I mean, at least something. Just think about the fact that we had to send 6,000 guys back in to fix up the cluster fudge that was our evacuation plan. I mean, that was, I mean, I just don't think we followed any kind. And you guys know more about this than I do. Like you were saying earlier, Sean, about your security. I mean, I don't think we followed any kind of protocol at all in carrying this out. I mean, I may, and again, Donald Trump was also wanting, and again, this is something else I won't do too many times on here is defend Trump, but at the same time, Trump, he had issued his statement a couple of days after, and I think he reiterated that yes, we were going to pull out of Afghanistan, but it wasn't going to look like this.
Yeah.
For me, what stings the most, and I think is a huge embarrassment for our country, really. When did America go from when did the narrative change from we don't negotiate with terrorists to now we're working and listening to terrorists and making sure we're doing what they want so we get out of their way? And sorry for bothering you guys. We're just gonna get our people out of here. Like, holy shit! Like, when did that happen? Like, and why are we allowing this to happen? You know what I mean? Like, it's God. It still blows my mind how some of this stuff happened. Really, it's crazy.
It's still fresh in my. I mean, seeing this is why I told when I was mentioning in our pre-production, our group chat, I was just like, my head's all over the place with this, especially after 20 years after 9/11, and still, I mean, I still remember when terrorists took airplanes hostage before 9/11, and Ronald Reagan bombing Libya because he could. He called Gaddafi a flake, and during a national broadcast called Gaddafi a flake, and we will avenge the loss of these people. And I mean, within 24 hours, we're lighting up Tripoli like it's the 4th of July, and within a week after 9/11, we're sending drone strikes and everything into Iraq and just leveling Al Qaeda hideouts. And now we're just like, to us, we are the laughing stock of the rest of the world. I mean, think about who's really going to who's going to take us seriously anymore.
No, I think we lost a lot of street cred after this whole incident. I really do. Very disappointed. That's all I can really say about it. Yeah.
Well, and we go from, I think unless you guys, I want to transition right into with this being said, so with Biden's new plan, do you think this was this is something else I didn't think, a lot of, there was thought put into it, but there wasn't a lot of rule of law or constitutionalism that was put into this thinking wise.
No, not at all. And you're referring to the mandate for the vaccine, correct?
Well, yeah, and what there is, and I'll just go ahead and put this graphic up on screen again too. So Joe Biden's, and this is the White House COVID plan. To break it down, and we'll go through each of these however you want to, but vaccinating the unvaccinated, further protection via booster shots, keeping schools open, increasing testing and mask mandates, which is probably the one we should start with first, protecting the economic recovery, and improving care for those with COVID-19. Let's just go ahead and just jump headlong into this mask mandate thing. So if you go to whitehouse.gov and you can cycle through, you can go through it's on their front page, but this mask mandate thing, or this vaccination mandate thing, is, to say the least, is highly unconstitutional. He says, well, we're going to basically say, if you have any federal funding, if you are over 100 employees in your workplace, you're going to either test your guys once a week or you're going to vaccinate them. And he's doing that. He's circumventing Congress by saying, okay, well, this is going to be an OSHA enforced thing, and it's a $14,000 fine for every infraction of this rule. And, since OSHA is not, and just to tell you guys this, OSHA would fall under the Department of Labor, okay, which is an executive organization, Department of Labor. But the Department of Labor doesn't monitor and do everything with OSHA. Okay, you do this, you do that. OSHA is kind of like their own entity. And a lot of the times when new things are put in by OSHA, it's done through Congress, not the president. It's done through Congress. And to me, we also saw over the last couple of weeks too that Biden tried to extend the moratorium for evictions. Well, the court's already thrown that out. The court said, no, you can't do that. And the damnedest statement that Trump could have made that Biden could have made the other day was, this isn't about freedom. When he said this isn't,
I heard that.
I was just like that. You write that on your epitaph, because when you say this is not about freedom, okay, what exactly is it about then? And then he makes a statement about we need to protect the vaccinated from the unvaccinated, and I'm like, and Kamala Harris put a tweet up this morning, and she reiterated one of Biden's things, and she said, part of this is to protect the vaccinated from the unvaccinated. And I thought, isn't that the vaccine's job? So I have mixed feelings when it comes to this, because yes, I do believe something, we're doing what we can, but what, and this is where I'm we need to get this COVID knocked down. But if people choose not to get the vaccine, I got the vaccine, so why should I care if they don't get the vaccine? You know what I'm saying? I mean, where are you guys at on all this?
Sorry, it's kind of noisy. I'm walking by the road. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I got the shot. Do I think it should be optional? Yes. The fact that, it's funny too. They even said months ago, they're like, well, we're not going to mandate it. We're not going to mandate it. What did they just do? They just started mandating it. So it's like, one, they lied to the American people. But I don't know. I just don't see how you can force somebody to do it. It's just, I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it at all.
So, but do you, and I've been teaching school for a long time. Whenever somebody told you guys, Sean, you walk into my class one day and I say, you've got to do this. What's our natural inclination?
Why?
Exactly. Why do I have to do this?
Or the more you get told to do it, the less you want to do it. It has the opposite effect.
The fact that, here's the list of all the people, and if I can scroll back down here and find this, requiring COVID-19 vaccinations for over 17 million healthcare workers at Medicare and Medicaid participating hospitals and other healthcare settings, requiring vaccination for all federal workers and for millions of contractors that do business with the federal government. And then the other one was requiring staff in Head Start programs, Department of Defense schools, Bureau of Indian Education operated schools to be vaccinated, and calling on all states to adopt vaccine requirements for all school employees. So the example I would want to use, okay, so if I say, what if I have and I do have a friend of mine who lives over in Pleasant Hill. She's a nurse over at Hannibal. And Hannibal is giving them the deadline at the end of October. We're not going to do the weekly testing thing. You are going to get vaccinated or you will be terminated. At some point, I think that you have to allow people to make, and this goes along with what Chad Perkins said last week. I mean, whenever the government comes in and says, we're going to make you do something, we're going to force you into this, people are going to ask, well, why are you, and when Joe says, well, it's not about freedom, well, you're making it so then you're making it a political issue, which it shouldn't be. This is a public health issue, not, I mean, I can tell you that it's been 15 years since I've gotten the flu shot. And every year they recommend teachers get the flu shot, get the flu shot, get the flu shot. Well, it's a guessing game with the flu shot because you never know what strand's going to come up.
Exactly.
And we're also seeing this though too with the COVID shot. Though now we're having these variants, and so as we vaccinate more, we're going to see more variants. Now, like I said, we have people who are, like I said, my aunt. One of the reasons why we weren't on 2 weeks ago is because my aunt passed away, and she did not get the COVID shot. Do I think she should have got the COVID shot? Yes, I do, because she was, I mean, I love my aunt. She was she was probably considered somebody who would be immunocompromised. Who I think should have gotten the vaccine. Her husband got the vaccine, but she chose not to. And again, that was her choice. And now we have to look at this and say, okay, you made your choice. Here's the consequence. And, I don't know. I have a feeling that we're going to make this even worse. And another one of our we have a nursing shortage already, and this isn't going to help. So I don't know, Sean, where are you at on this?
Yeah, I mean, you guys have kind of hit it. It's when I look at the vaccine, and again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not even going to try to claim that I truthfully, genuinely know. But from the research I have done and listening to doctors speak about the vaccine, who have openly spoken about it, because a lot of them choose not to, so they're not ripped apart by journalists or people that they might know, and yet these are professionals in their field. Literally listening to like virologists, individuals who study respiratory viruses. I've listened to those individuals who have spoken about the vaccine and say, if you want to get the vaccine, get it. The vaccine is safe. Go ahead and get it. But what a lot of them have made pretty clear is that me getting the vaccine doesn't affect the person to my left or to my person's right inability to get COVID, because the vaccine will not prevent me from getting COVID. What it can prevent is it can help me from having certain symptoms of COVID, making having COVID potentially easier to deal with than if I wasn't vaccinated. However, where the issue kind of lies is we are seeing people, when people are belittling individuals that don't have the vaccine, they're belittling it, talking about how, it affects my safety. It affects my safety. And what the professionals in the fields are saying is that's just not true. The vaccine is meant for you. You can still get COVID. And we're seeing, we're having such a huge spike from people that were kind of in that first window of getting the vaccine, get COVID again, because once they had the vaccine, they were like, that's the be and end all. And that's one of the wild things about COVID for me, was like, when people have been vaccinated for other stuff, like, they still knew there was the risk. Like when you get a flu shot, people know you can still get the flu when you get the flu shot. So why people were so quick to jump the gun and just go out and do whatever they want once they had the COVID shot was interesting. But now we're seeing getting the vaccine is more beneficial for the individual, not so much the people around them. And that is what I am hearing from professionals that speak on it.
Well, and our good buddy Matt Edelman, who's usually on with us, and he'll be on in a few weeks, I imagine, but and I'll put this little snippet on the screen too. And this is the hospital, this was back in August. It was 100, and this was in the hospital system that he works in Louisville, Kentucky. Out of 156 hospitalized COVID-19 patients, 14 were vaccinated and 142 were unvaccinated. So I'm going to go in and play devil's advocate now. Okay. Let's look at everybody else, because obviously we have a crowding problem, and we have a hospital bed problem, and we have this, so and in playing the other side of this coin, we also have to consider this: if our hospitals are being overloaded with COVID cases, with these new COVID cases, and we have people who need to get elective surgery, whether it's a knee surgery or if it's a hip replacement or if it's just a straight up heart attack. Okay, someone who I'll put it to you this way, and I'm not going to give any, but I'm just going to say somebody who was, another reason why we were not on 2 weeks ago is someone who's very close to me attempted suicide 2 weeks ago, and this person's spouse was not allowed in to see their spouse, and this person coded. Okay, this person was blue lip when they found this person. This person had tried to take pills, and they did not have an ICU unit for this person. So what they ended up doing was basically cordoning off part of the ER, the room itself, and they made that into a makeshift ICU because they did not have the room in the hospital for all of these people who were COVID cases. So now I'm playing devil's advocate, and again, this is part of my dilemma that I'm dealing with right now. And the narrative that is being put to us is we're all in this together. Okay, so now we have to go back, and this, I didn't have the courage. I'm just going to admit I didn't have the courage to really argue with Chad Perkins about this last week, but I did mention it. What about when the role comes into government for the collective good? So for the collective good of the whole, we're going to implement these things. Looking at it through that lens, then is the government going to be, could they be justified in doing these things, do you think, or is this something that's still an overstep?
Have we, and you can, if has there been a time in the past where something like that has happened, not necessarily with like a vaccine, but whether it be for crop production, whether it be for, anything? Has there been one of those kind of for the greater good moments in U.S. history that we've kind of seen before? Or
the closest thing that I can think of right off the top of my head would be mandatory auto insurance and mandatory seatbelt laws. And I'll say it for this reason. And again, when you get into the terminology that is used in the Constitution, and I used this last week, government can override due process rights when it falls into to ensure public safety, to ensure public health, public welfare. I forgot what the other one was. Public morals. And in the name of public safety, then I'm going to say, even though, and you still have those people who will not wear a seatbelt to this day, but the government is saying, look, we have studies that have shown if you don't wear your seatbelt, your likelihood of survival goes down drastically if you don't wear your seatbelt. All right. Then you can, and then I remember when mandatory insurance, this was right about when I was getting my driver's license around 90 or 91, when several states, and I believe Delaware and New Hampshire, I couldn't remember, it was one of the small states, were the last ones to do this, to require that every motorist carry at least liability insurance to make sure that everybody's protected in a situation like, okay, the other person caused this car accident, but they don't have any insurance. So now I'm left to pay this out of my pocket. And so in that sense, I would say that to me, that would be the closest thing. I mean, other than prohibition, I can't really think of anything else.
So prohibition was one of the things that had, that one had stepped into my mind as one of those things that the U.S. government had kind of just tried to do, thinking that would be the be end all and fix all their problems. But
you look at that. So I mean, I can run with that for a second. With prohibition, what did we see? We saw an increase in organized crime. We saw an increase in homicides, especially in the streets that Travis is walking around in right now. But we saw this all occur in these as a result. Now, if make the tie-in now with COVID with these mandates, what would you guys think? We saw what happened with prohibition. We've seen the positive effects of making auto insurance and seatbelt. We've seen the decline in those kind of areas, but do you think this is going to have some kind of really humongous blowback, that this is going to be another thing that's just going to blow up in Biden's face?
One thing we've talked about 100 times over is, especially when it comes to big government, when they have power, they do not relinquish said power. Yes, I firmly believe, and to kind of, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. When you were talking about how organized or how much thought you think was put into this, I can say from firsthand experience, there wasn't a lot, just because as a full-time service member, we got the memo that's kind of that's stating that the vaccine is now mandated, is required per the president of the United States. However, there's no date. There's no you'll be vaccinated by at this time. There's no you'll be vaccinated at this location. It literally just a memo kind of that went out that said it's going to happen. We're icing out the details right now, kind of thing. So it was a very abrupt announcement just to kind of be had. And again, whether it's that to save face over the shit that's going on in Afghanistan, who knows? But what I can say is, yeah, I do. I genuinely do think Joe will probably get the nomination again if he makes it to term.
If he lives that long.
And I'm not even talking about just living. I mean, to be fair, they're already doing their best to cover up his onset dementia right now.
Yeah.
But if it worsens, could I see them pulling him from the position? Maybe. I think the issue is they're too scared. That if Joe goes, then they potentially lose the election. I think that's kind of any party. I think that's why they kept Trump around, is they were like, if we get rid of Trump, whoever the Republican nominee is going to lose to whoever the incoming Democrat is. I think that's kind of why we sometimes see presidents get 2 terms, even when people are like, this was horrendous, but they're more inept to dealing with 4 more years of crap than they are in 4 more years of shit. So
well, as a side note, as they trying to keep Trump relevant, I mean, I don't know if anybody caught this over the weekend, but during the Belfort and Evander Holyfield fight, well, throughout
he was a ring announcer.
He was a ring, and I just tuned in. I just tuned in to marvel at what he. It's just like, oh yes, he's doing great. He's just fantastic in there, and the way he's fighting, and that's going to be a devastating punch. I was just like, this is a dire attempt to try to keep somebody relevant. But yeah,
that punch was huge. I haven't seen a punch like that since I punched Hillary Clinton right out of the presidential race in 2016. What a good race. What a good race. Great match that we're seeing. Evander Holyfield's old, but who else is old? Joe Biden. Sleepy Joe. Old. He's about as out cold as Tito Ortiz.
I heard he wants to fight him. I heard he wants to do a boxing match with him.
Heck yeah. I would pay good money to see Trump.
That would be a pay-per-view.
But that's just how we should determine the next president, is just a straight up boxing.
So what you were saying though, I mean, even if he stays alive until 2024, I mean, I really do think that the Democrats, like you said, are really going to have to weigh out their options. And I mean, and
who would be the best nominee for them aside from Joe?
Well, I mean, the Kamala, I mean,
That's who I'm thinking
But
is who they put forth.
but again, we're still in this generation of people who are. I mean, I made a bet. I'll tell you this much. I made a bet with this, and I need to bring this paper on sometime. Bring this, at least get an interview with this guy. He is a firefighter over in Columbia. Joseph, or yeah, it was Jameson. I can't think of his first name right now. It wasn't Joseph Jameson. It was another Jameson. But anyway, I made a bet with him in 2004 that we would not. I made a $20 bet with him that we wouldn't have a female running for president in the for 20 years, and then I owe him $20 now because of Hillary. But I still don't think that we are at a place where we have too many closed-minded men who are just sexist enough to think that a woman can't handle the president's job. But again, it goes back to what you were saying a while ago. Who's lined up behind Kamala? Kamala is actually within, she's not within the Social Security age. So, but who else do you have? You have you have the same old fogies who are lined up. I mean, you're not going to get Nancy Pelosi in there. You're not going to get all that goober from the Senate, like not shoot, Chuck Schumer. You're not going to get Chuck Schumer in there. So I mean, come on.
I one guy I would have loved to see kind of go a little bit farther, because I actually kind of liked him a little bit, was Mayor Pete. I like Pete Buttigieg quite a bit.
Yeah.
Really well spoken individual. I think just kind of being just a mayor kind of hurt a little bit, and not being on a bigger grand scale. But yeah, I really like Mayor Pete. And another one that I think recently announced that they were going to run as a third party candidate. And I mean, we'll see what kind of buzz can be brought. But I think Andrew Yang said that he was going to be going a third party.
And I liked what Andrew Yang is more. He could get the libertarian, as far as some of his talk, he could get the libertarian. To me, when I read some of his stuff in the 2020 election, to me, he sounded more libertarian than he did anything else. I mean,
I agree.
And I agree. He was saying a lot of stuff like, "Hey, let's give a lot of this back to the states." And I was like, "Whoa, that's weird coming from a Democrat's mouth." And I really did I liked him. I liked him a lot.
It's interesting. I think the Democratic Party, I would naturally say, is more outspoken than like. Well, I would say, like, when it comes to Republicans, I would say like conservative Republicans are typically more on like the quiet scale. You don't really hear large amounts of them kind of coming out and how they view politics and what their beliefs are. You have your Trumpanites who, they have their way of what they believe the Republican Party is, which I wouldn't really necessarily call it the Republican Party. But when you look at the Democratic side of things, it's such a weird landscape, because you have your more conservative Democrats who are really focused in more on like the social issues, where socially they lean more left, but maybe like more conservative side of things, they're kind of like in the middle, or whatever. But then as it gets on, there gets to be such an extremely dangerous side of Democrats that are unfortunately the ones that are the loudest. That we hear, your Bernie Sanders, your Cory Bushes, your AOCs, like very dangerous politicians.
But I also think, though, that those people are also distancing themselves. The Democrats are distancing themselves from what I've been reading, and I've been doing a lot of looking into this. Whenever I catch an article from even if I see a Time or a Newsweek article, I think it was a Newsweek article that I caught this in, was how the Democrats are starting to, Pelosi, AOC publicly criticizing Nancy Pelosi that she is weak as a leader, and it's been a couple months since I read this, but AOC's like, I have a vote of no confidence in the leadership of Nancy Pelosi. Well, I'm sorry, but for being a junior, or she's no longer, I guess she'd be a sophomore representative from New York, you've only been in for 4 years, Chick, and you're already. I mean, that's pretty big, and that's a quick way to get yourself unfunded and unsupported in your next reelection campaign.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think part of that too, literally goes is the Democratic Party um, trying to be smart of not trying to lose what they have now, because they know exactly how um, voters, I think, because of COVID and because of how the economy was handled, because of how this withdrawal from Afghanistan is now being handled, I really do firmly believe Democrats more than ever will try to distance themselves from the ideology of things like socialism in these next 2 years. I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if these midterm elections that come around, if the news attacks and the ads that we see literally like are from like Democrat versus Democrat, literally, calling out, well, he's a socialist Democrat, the worst kind of Democrat that you could be. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing those kind of attacks moving forward. It's weird because take ourselves back from 2016 and then even election time last year. It was such a huge split between Democrat and Republican, and the two sides of you're wrong versus I'm right. We're now, as we're trickling a little bit further in, and I think it's because people have realized how leadership has handled COVID and what they're kind of seeing, and how even if you're in big Democratic cities, it's very clear that, even your Democratic elected officials are on the side of corporate America and not like look at, for example, Jackson County, Missouri. Okay, huge example. Kansas City Chiefs just had a sold out home game with damn near 80,000 people in the stands. Yet mom and pop businesses are being shut down because of violating mask mandates.
Yeah.
I didn't see a mask worn by a spectator while watching the television the other day.
And that was
now their argument
that was
is, well,
on just about any. That was just about on any game too.
I'm using. But when you look at Kansas City, which is considered a more democratic city, how leadership is playing things of where they're giving the pass to where's the money being made kind of thing, and it'll be very interesting. I'm genuinely interested to see who comes forth in these midterms, who gets reelected in certain cities. And then I really do genuinely think that what happens at midterms is going to set the tone for how politicians distance themselves or what little niches come together within their own parties before the election and re-election.
Right. Yep.
So.
Yep.
Well, gentlemen, this has been a good talk.
Of course. Yep.
Yeah, always is. Travis has made it to the end. I'm hoping he's heading towards the door.
How close are you to your apartment now, Travis?
Oh, I'm really close. I've just been kind of walking circles in the neighborhood.
And we haven't heard any gunfire. Well, you've had it muted though too, so we haven't heard any gunfire yet.
No, you guys missed a couple shots earlier.
Oh, those are fireworks. As the locals
right.
say. Those are just fireworks.
Celebrating
independence.
No fireworks tonight.
Gentlemen, before we sign off, do we have anything we want to add to our listeners? Anything special?
Hey, and just another outlet for our podcast, and I found this out by accident. We're now available on Google Podcast now as well.
Nice.
And
That's awesome. Yeah,
I got just a chance happening. I saw that on our stat board. It said that we had one. I think we had one listener who was downloading from Google Podcast. I was like, oh,
nice.
There you go.
Well, yeah. So definitely. Again, I can't say it enough. We do thank you guys for listening, whether it's on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean. We genuinely do appreciate it. I was talking to the guys before we went live. I've had a couple people tell me how much they love tuning into the podcast while they're driving. They throw it on their way to work or stuff like that. And how some people are all caught up. And seriously, from the bottom of our hearts, that's awesome. We literally come on here, we bullshit, we bitch and gripe and moan, and we talk for about an hour, once a week. And well, it really does mean a lot. You guys listen. I definitely we will do some talking this week and probably next week and find a way to get you guys more involved in a couple different things.
That was something I was going to mention too. We had by my count that I have right now, we had 34 comments on tonight's podcast alone.
Awesome.
Thank you guys so much. I tried to get a few of these I tried to get quite a few of these comments in. Please continue to do that. We love it when you guys do that.
Yes, please like, share. If you watch us on YouTube, subscribe. All of that regular good stuff. But please just share. Just talk to your friends, talk to your family. Let them know if they want a little bit of politics in their life and just want to kind of hear what we've got going. And you think that it'd be for them. Please let them know. We'll kind of see. Again, like I said, I want to find a way to get you guys more involved, not even just with the podcast, but outside of the podcast, and find some stuff that we can all kind of talk about. I think it'd be a lot of fun. So, again, I hope everyone enjoys their week. Hope you guys stay safe, stay smart. And I'm excited for next week. Should be a lot of fun. And again, make sure to check us out. Like us on Facebook, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, YouTube, wherever you guys give us a listen. And I cannot wait. I know the three of us can't wait to talk to you until next week.
All right. Thanks, guys.
See you guys.